Hi, Laverne.
Hi, Paul.
You may begin.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, learners. Welcome to today's lesson. So today's topic is obviously to deal with arrays, and the topic is working with an unknown size for an array. So that's what we're going to look at for today. And yeah, so if you were with me yesterday, obviously we spoke about, or we did an example with sorting a string array. Okay, so today we're just going to continue with that. So objectives, what will you learn by the end of this lesson? Hopefully you will figure out how to code, being able to code for an array when the size of the array is unknown. Okay, that's emphasis today, okay? When the size of the array is unknown, being able to track the amount of items in a question, obviously if it's unknown, we should be able to figure out the amount of items that were stored in the array. And finally, using components other than a button to sort. Okay, so we're going to look at a checkbox today, and when the checkbox is selected, then it allows us to sort the values in the array. So that's what we're going to look at for today. So again, working with an unknown size, keeping track of the amount, and working with other components. Okay, so quick recap. What is sorting? We explained what sorting was in an array. It's just arranging values in a particular order. We spoke about the different types of sorting, and the main two that you need to obviously understand will be the bubble sort and the selection sort. Now, I'm not a big fan of the bubble sort. I think neither are you, but again, anyone is acceptable. Remember, you only need to know one for programming, but again, when it comes to the theory, you're obviously required to know the working principle of both a bubble sort and a selection sort. Again, just to sum it up in a few words, a bubble sort is obviously comparing values next to each other, whereas a selection sort compares values throughout the array before going and restarting the process. Okay, so one next to each other and one starts comparing each value in the array. Obviously, when we talk about ascending order, we mean that we're going to arrange the numbers from lowest to highest, and descending order is from highest to lowest. And finally, alphabetical order. I guarantee you this is the only thing that they can ask you with regards to sorting. So please, it's the only thing that you need to know over there. And finally, be able to sort with multiple data types. Okay, yesterday we spoke about, or we worked with an integer data type. A real data type will work in the same manner, and we finished off with a string data type. So that's where we stopped at yesterday, okay? So again, if you're unsure of what arrays are or anything to do with arrays, please view the previous videos on YouTube. I try to go as slow as possible, ensuring that we can try it out together. Now, as you can see on your screens on this slide, it says what happens when we don't know the size of the array. Okay, that's so important. We're not always going to know the size, and it's not efficient for us to be able to know the size each time. So let's see what the slide says. It says, to ensure efficiency and to make our programs as versatile as possible, we need to ensure that the size of the array is able to change to a different value whenever the program is run. Okay, so again, being able to change the size of the array for each run of the program. Okay, so maybe the first time the user has 5 values, maybe the second time the user has 10 values, whatever it is, our program should be able to change with what's required by the person running the program. Okay, so let's look at it in a practical situation. Does the cashier in the supermarket know exactly how many goods each person is going to have? Obviously, the answer is no, okay? How are they able to cater for that? And that's what we're going to look at today. One of the instances will be maybe to cater for every customer, okay, regardless of whether they have 1 item or 100 items. So you may go ahead and say, let me create this array to have go up to 100, that be the size. But would you agree with me that it's not going to be very efficient in doing so? Because if you had to come and pay for one item, you can imagine that loop is going to go 100 times before the user can, or before the cashier can see what the total is going to be. So it's not the most efficient being able to have a large size for the array. So what do we need to create this this array that's obviously going to change each time? So we're obviously going to use a while loop, which determines the size of, remember, unlike the for loop, we knew the amount of times that we're going to repeat. Now, since the size of the array is unknown, we're obviously going to need another type of loop. And we know the two types of looping being a for loop and a while loop. Obviously with the while loop, it is quite good for us because the loop will continue as long as a condition is fulfilled, okay? The loop will continue as long as the condition is fulfilled. For instance, allow the user to enter items into the array until the person enters stop, or maybe presses enter on the keyboard, whichever it is. Okay, so our array should be able to work in a similar manner. So first things first, do you agree that we need a while loop for this array? So again, why while loop? Because it's going to change based on the condition. And the next thing, the two important things that you're going to realize is this. So in addition to the while loop, when assigning the size of the array, we have to assume a maximum value. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to use all these max values, okay? It doesn't mean that we're going to use all these 100 values, but it's important for us to be able to allocate a maximum size, okay? I will repeat that. We're going to be using a while loop in this question and setting a maximum size. So when we get to the question and you see me putting 100 over there, it doesn't mean that the loop is going to go 100 times. It just means that we are catering for the maximum in the event that the user goes 100 times. Okay, the loop should work if the user wants to store one value in the array. The loop should work if the user wants to store 100 values in the array. Okay, so obviously that's all going to depend on whether the condition is being fulfilled or not. So we're going to go ahead. Okay, now we're going to try this example, and obviously we'll have some time for questions at the end. Create a project called pickhyper_p. You are required by the owner of the pickhyper to create an efficient tilt-slip application with the following requirements. Okay, let's see what we are required to do. Okay, your form should resemble the design below. And first things first, create an array called sArrayItems to be able to store the names of an unknown amount of grocery items. So would you agree, before we get to the design, that this is going to be a string array because you're going to store the names of items, example, tea, bread, etc. So that's what that array is going to be there for. Okay, this is how the interface looks. Nothing complicated, okay? Just two buttons, and this is what I tried to tell you. In this case, can you see we're trying to work with a checkbox. So when the user ticks this box, then it should allow us to sort the items. Nothing complicated, but again, it's obviously showing you how to code with different components as well. And our output is a memo. So if you're trying this out later at home, that's a T memo. Those are two buttons, and that is a checkbox. Okay, so again, let's just go back to the question. So you're going to save your project and you're going to create this array. Okay, so let's get into Delphi and let's see how this works. So we're going to, remember, we don't know the size of this array. As you can see, it says an unknown amount of grocery items. We don't know this. So how are we going to create this? Let's go to Delphi. Let's try to do this together. Okay, so you should be able to see the Delphi screen in front of you now. Now I'm going to declare my array. Remember, it's a string array, so I'm going to call it I think they did give us the name, sArrayItems. What is the data structure that we are using? Remember, you want to use those proper terminology. It's a data structure. It is an array. What is the size of the array for my thing? We don't know, agree. So I'm going to set 100, but it doesn't mean that it will obviously have 100. it will store 100 values. No. Okay, and we're going to put a comment over there. So if you're trying this out later, the size is just the max value. Okay, it is important to note that that's not going to be, we're not going to fill the array with 100 values. The size is just the maximum value. It is still dependent on, the condition. So that's really important. Regardless of the fact that we gave this 100, there's two things that needs to be met. First, we gave it a maximum value, but in addition to that, it's going to be dependent on a condition. So that's so important that you know that. Okay, let's say for instance, so you're probably thinking, do I have to use 100? No, you don't have to. Maybe you want to make it 1,000 or 500 or 50 or 20. Just think of a reasonable or suitable size, and maybe let's look at it. Maybe you want to store the age, a company's details, and maybe there's only 50 employees in the company. So maybe have that array for 50 being the size being 50. So again, it's just trying to be realistic as possible, but not necessarily being able to obviously use all the values in the array. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to go to the button, and we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so we declared the array, we created the interface. What is the next thing for us to do? Okay, so 1.2 says input the name of the items. Since the number of items are unknown, terminate the input with the word exit. So that's so important, okay? You should be able to terminate. So that's what's going to make the size of the array change. Okay, so when the user enters the word exit, it should be able to stop at that size for the array. So let's go ahead. Let's code this. So I'm going to go back into Delphi. I'm going to double click on the enter names button. Okay, and I'm going to use a while loop. So again, I'm sure you guys know how a while loop works. I'm going to declare a variable so that we can get the item name. So I'm going to say s item name. I'm going to make that a string. Okay, and then I'm going to come within the begin, and I'm going to say s item name is equal to or assigned to, and we want to allow, okay, and we want to allow the user to be able to enter the values for the array. So we're going to use an input box. I'm going to use an input box to enter the name of items. So let's go ahead. Let's put the heading for the input box, items input. Okay, and the instruction, please enter the name of items. Okay, the names of the items. I mean, it could be better than that, but that seems to do. So we've got this. Okay, so we obviously want the user to first enter the name. Remember, this is a conditional loop, and as long as the condition is fulfilled, the value should be added to the array. So we want to use a while loop. Remember, if we know the size, we would use a for loop, but unfortunately we don't know the size. So we're going to use a while loop. And I'm going to say while s item name is not equal to, remember the inequality symbol, that's what we have when not equal to, while s item is not equal to the word exit. Okay, it is not the best way to obviously test the condition, because again, learners might think, oh, what happens if the user types exit in lowercase? Is it still going to work in that event? Yes, you should be able to cater for it regardless of whether the user types uppercase or lowercase exit. So really simple, all I'm going to do is go ahead and say while uppercase, okay, I shouldn't have done that, while uppercase, okay, and then you want to make sure that when the user enters the word, you want to be able to convert it to uppercase. Let me just surround this with a bracket and let me remove this. So while uppercase s item is not equal to exit, let's put a comment over there. That's obviously input. Now, the while loop will obviously test before the value is going into the array, okay? So testing before the value can be input into in the array. So that's what you're going to do first. We're not just going to say, okay, the user enters a value, let's send it to the array. We obviously want to allow the user to first, or allow the code to be first tested to ensure that the value is not exit. So we get the S item name, and then we're testing it first before we can send it to the array. Okay, and obviously if the word is not equal to exit, and if it's not equal to exit, then means that that the condition has been fulfilled. And the user should be, and we should be able to add the items to the array. Quite simple, agree. So we're just gonna go ahead and we're going to say S, just gonna go ahead and we're just gonna say S array items. Okay, and we remember it's an array, so it has to be used with square brackets. And we're going to say, give it a position. Now, what is the position? That is so important. Now, look at that now. We have to use the array with square brackets, but then we realize that, okay, what is the position going to be? And that's where the for loop was so easy for us, agree? Because with the for loop, we were able to put in I, which made it quite nice. With the for loop, we were able to use I. But what are we going to use in this case? What are we going to use when we don't know the size of the array and we're using a while loop? What do we use then? So this is what we're going to do, okay? And I'm going to put this comment over there. Note, we don't have a position to store the value in our array. So what do you think we need to do? I'm going to create a variable, okay? So I'm going to write this here. So I'm going to create a counter, okay? It's just a normal variable. Okay, I'm going to create a counter, and what the counter will do is the counter will allow you to obviously have a position, because I hope you guys can see that we came to a stage, and how are you going to store the items in the array? You need a position. So I'm going to say this, okay? I'm going to say I count items. You can call it whatever you want. And I'm going to make that an integer. Okay, I count items, and I'm going to make it an integer. I'm going to assign I count items to 0 first. Okay, I'm going to assign I count items to 0. And would you agree that we are solving the problem of finding a position? Because would you agree that this should go in there? But I hope you're also thinking about the fact, okay, fair enough, you can start off the counter at 0, but what happens after that? So this is going to be quite nice. So we're going to say, notice where I'm putting this, okay? I'm saying I count items is equal to I count items plus 1, or you could use the ing function, it works perfectly fine. Now, by incrementing the counter, we can see that we always have a new position to store the values. And can you see that the counter is only incrementing once the condition has been fulfilled, okay? Take note of where the counter is being placed. Okay, you don't want to put the counter out of the loop because you want the condition to first be fulfilled for the counter to change value and be able to send that new position to the array. So take note of the placement of the counter, okay? You don't want to put this out of the loop. So let's see if we solve the problem. Okay, so as long as the value is not equal to exit, and again, can you notice uppercase? So that matched up uppercase. Now, what are we going to send in to what are we going to use as a position? We can use I count items. Look at that, okay? We sent in I count items, and now we were able to use array. Remember, arrays have to be used with square brackets, which is perfect. So we're saying that once the condition has been tested and the word is not equal to exit, then send the value to a particular position in the array. So all we're going to do now is we're going to say S array items I count at that position. Let's send in S item name. Okay, so that's where the value is going to be stored in the array. That's where obviously we did the testing. The testing was obviously true. or fulfilled, and we were able to send the items. Now, can you see that when the loop continues, I count items is going to increase, which is also good because now we are able to keep changing the position of the array, and each value will obviously be at its own position. So again, quite a simple question, but take note of those really important things. The max size, again, doesn't mean that we're going to use the max size, and the counter to be able to track those items or storing items at a new position each time. Okay, so remember with the while loop, let us not forget the basics with the while loop. What are the basics with the while loop? With the while loop, it means that the input has to be repeated, because by repeating the input, we are obviously then able to allow the loop to continue. So with the while loop, and I know this is all basics, you should know it, but just to recap for those who don't, with the while loop, the input has to be repeated to ensure that the loop continues. Okay, how else is the loop going to continue? We don't know the size of the loop. So by using the while loop and by repeating, notice, so with the while loop, we're going to repeat the input. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this line that's here, and I'm going to paste it. Okay, why make life difficult and retype it? We can obviously just use that repetition. So again, learners, I hope this was really simple. We set the counter, we did the input, we used the while loop, and obviously that was how a conditional or a loop was obviously going to be done. That is how we were able to change it. So the first time, maybe we have a person who says, I want to run the array 5 times. Can you see it will work for that instance? Maybe the second time the person goes, I want to run it for 10 times. It'll change each time, but knowing that we can't exceed 100 values. Now, again, this is not compulsory. You could have had 200, just be realistic as possible, okay? If there's not going to be 1,000 values that you're going to store on it, then why create that max value? But there's no stopping you from allocating a maximum size. Okay, so remember that works for string, integers, whatever it is. Okay, so take a moment, look at that. Hopefully it is absolutely easy for you to understand. And that was the idea of this question. Okay, so while you're taking a moment and looking at that, remember tomorrow we want to do searching through an array. And I think then we should be completing with arrays then. Okay, we just got parallel arrays to do 2 more sections, and we should be completely done with arrays. Now, remember, I was just telling this to my grade 12s today, that these questions are going to get tested to you in grade 12. Yes, they do a section called 2-dimensional arrays, but it doesn't stop them from asking you questions on 1-dimensional arrays. So please note how to do this. It's really, really important that you know how to do this, okay? So I'm going to go ahead. Hopefully that gave you enough time to look at it. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. So would you agree? Let's just try to just see where we are. We created the form, we created the array, we went ahead, we created the interface, and we created this conditional array, if that's a word term, proper term to use. Were we able to keep track of the items? I think so. We did that. We obviously had a counter, and that was able to keep track of our items. Now this is the code again. Nothing what we didn't do. We just said 100 is the size of the array, and basically this. Now I would suggest, if you want to obviously try this out later, take pictures of the code now, or you can alternatively just try watching it on YouTube and trying it out. Okay, so remember, arrays are used with square brackets, so that's what made these. And remember, now we use different variables, but it's essentially the same code. Okay, and don't forget, if you're using a while loop, input needs to be repeated. That's what's gonna allow the loop to continue. Okay, let's move ahead. Display the items one below each other. In addition, display the total number of items purchased. Okay, so let's go back to our code. So this is what the question is. Display the items one below each other. In addition, display the total number of items purchased. Okay, so let's go to Delphi again. So that's the question, okay, to display the items below each other and to display the total number of items. Now, would you agree with me that in order for us to display the total number of items, the I count items is in the wrong place, okay? Because can you see it is declared globally? It is declared, sorry, locally. And with it being declared locally, what does it prevent us doing? It cannot be accessed in another button. So I want to just cut this out and I want to just paste it globally so that the entire form has access to it and not just the button. Okay, so again, I just made the I count items globally, and let's note why, because you're probably going to try this out later. Globally, so that all buttons have access to the variable. Now that's really simple, okay? That's not going to be anything complicated for you to understand. But again, it was so important that we made I count items global. Okay, perfect. Now let's get and try this code out. Let's do the display. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on doing the display. If you're having troubles with display, you're welcome to go ahead and try it out. Now let me ask you this. Okay, before we get to coding this, we're obviously going to need the values that are stored in the array. Do you think that we're going to continue to use a while loop, or are we going to use a for loop now? Okay, let me ask you that again. Can we continue using a while loop, or would it be feasible for us to use a for loop? I mean, some of you maybe know what we're going to do, but for others, do we know the size of the array now? Yes, in the first instance, we weren't sure of the size of the array. But now that we obviously ran the program and we obviously user inputted the values, would you agree that once the first button is done and obviously executed, would you agree that we were able to keep track of the size of the array? And how were we able to keep track of the size of the array was with this variable called I count items. Because I count items is obviously the size of the array, do you agree that we can use a for loop in this button? Okay, because what's the requirements for a for loop? The requirements for a for loop is to have a starting value and a stopping value. Yes, in the first instance, we didn't know what the stopping value was, but would you agree I count items is now holding the stopping value? And obviously it's going to be dependent on the condition, but it's going to hold the stopping value. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to use a for loop. Okay, let's see how this gets done. I'm going to use a for loop, and I'm going to say for I is equal to 1, and what do you think the stopping value is going to be? Do you agree that it's going to be I count items? Okay, do you agree that it's going to be I count items? And let's note that. Okay, I'm going to say note the use of the for loop. Okay, and the stopping value, because that's important. Okay, the stopping value. Okay, note the use of the for loop and the stopping value. Okay, really important. Yes, it was unknown, but once we were able to keep track of the amount of items, we do in fact have a stopping value. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to display. I'm displaying in a memo component. It works exactly the same as a rich edit. Mem display dot lines dot add, and I want to display the string items, so there's no converting or formatting, whatever. I'm just going to display the items as array items, and I need to send in a position. I'm sending in I. Okay, please take note of that. All we needed I count items was for the size of the array. Once we had the size, we could go back to our usual way of sending in I in the brackets. And let's note that, okay, let's put that in as a comment, take note of the S array items, square brackets I. That is so important that you note that. Okay, it's these basics, and I promise you, if you can do an example like this, you're obviously really well prepared for the exams. Okay, so are we missing out anything? Yes, we are missing out, because the question said to display the items and then display the total number of items. Now that's going to be so simple. I'm not going to do that in the loop because we don't want to repeat it 10 times. So I'm going to come out of the loop and I'm going to display the total. Let's put a comment over there for those who are having troubles. Displaying the number of items out of the loop, okay, out of the loop. It doesn't have to be in the loop. And we're going to say mem, we're using the same component, mem display, dot lines, dot add, and let's put a message, okay? Let's say the total number of items are, let's leave a space over there because we don't want the number to go right next to it. And I'm going to say int to string. Okay, is everyone happy with int to string? That's going to allow us to convert the number to a string before we send it out. And I'm going to send in I count items. Okay, perfect. Let's see if this works. Okay, I'm going to run this and let's see if this works. Okay, let me share that with you. We're going to try this together if it works. Enter the names of items. Let's go ahead and enter the items. Let's enter bread, milk, okay, and tea. We entered 3 items, agree. And then we want to stop the loop. So I'm going to put the word exit. Notice everything is in lowercase, but because I used uppercase, it should be able to still work. Okay, so the dialog box is gone. Let's display the items. Okay, so bread, milk, tea, perfect. It displays it. And can you see that it stored the number of items as 3? I should have went ahead again. I didn't do this from yesterday. I should have said dot clear, but there's nothing. It's not the end of the world if you didn't. Okay, so again, displaying items vertically and being able to count the number of items. So really, really important. Okay. Let's go finally, we still have some time. Let's go lastly back to the slide and I want to just finish off this question. Okay, so finally for today, guys, let's see, code the checkbox, which is quite nice. Okay, code the following in the checkbox. Okay, notice we're not coding in a button, we are coding in a checkbox because when the user does check it, it should obviously activate, it should be activated when the user clicks on the checkbox. So if the checkbox is selected or checkbox, the name of the checkbox is check sort items is clicked, arrange the names of the items in alphabetical order. Really simple, nothing complicated, but I just wanted to show you how to use it if we had a different component to work with. I'm going to go back into Delphi. We have about 7 minutes to go. Let's just do this quickly, learners. Okay, I'm going to come out and I'm going to do my code in the checkbox. Okay, can you see what I'm doing? I'm double clicking on the checkbox. Now, remember from yesterday, we spoke about sorting. I'm not going to talk about all that again, but we spoke about the fact that we needed 2 loops. The purpose of the 2 loops were there for us to be able to compare 2 values with each other. Okay, I'm going to say for I is equal to 1 to what? We obviously know to what, agree, to I count items. Okay, I promise you, you can rest assured a question like this will get asked in the paper where the size is unknown. They're not going to make your life easy for you. Okay, and notice this here. Notice I count items. Remember, with a selection sort, it's always 1 less than the size of the array. So I'm going -1, and the second loop is obviously we're going to use j, but you're welcome to use whatever variables you want. Second loop is going to be j, but remember that's going to be I plus 1. That's what enables you to be able to compare 2 values at a time, because that's what we are essentially testing. This is going to be I count items, and this is going to go to the size of the array. So the 1 is -1, and the 1 is the size of the array. So again, hopefully that you understood that. Let's do our comparing. Okay, I'm just going to put that as a comment over here, comparing. And I'm going to say if S array items at I, and remember we use the greater than symbol to sort alphabetically, so nothing complicated, is greater than S array items at J. So that's what's the purpose of this I plus 1. Again, if you didn't follow yesterday, when that value is 1, obviously I plus 1 will be 1 plus 1, which is 2. So that's how he's able to compare item 1 with item 2, then compare item 1 with item 3, item 1, etc. So that's what's going to happen over there. We're going to go ahead and do the swapping. And remember, in order for us to do the swapping, we want to have a temporary variable, because what's the purpose of the temporary variable? The purpose is obviously the fact that if we don't have the temporary variable, we're going to lose one of the values when we're swapping. So the temporary variable is there to allow the user to take one of the values, place it in the temporary box, do the swapping, and place the temporary value back to where it's supposed to be. So we're going to say stemp, and hopefully you guys figured this out, is equal to sArrayItems. And what are we going to send in? We're going to send in I because I is first. And look how simple it is. We just start off with the last part of this. So that will obviously build up that, that momentum for you guys. So since that's the last over there, we're going to do that over there. So we're going to say sArrayItems. It's an array, so it has to be used with square brackets. Is equal to what? Obviously, we want to switch it with the value stored at position J. Okay. And then notice this is the last thing that we are working with. So finally, all I'm going to say is sArrayItems is equal to the temporary value. Okay, really simple. And if you don't understand what's the purpose of the temporary value, please go and view the other videos. If you want to, you can put a dialog box to indicate to the user the values has been sorted. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go straight ahead and run my program. So just a quick recap before we do that. Everyone understands we're sorting we're arranging the values in alphabetical order. We had the two for loops. Remember, this one goes to -1, that one goes to +1 to the count items. We're doing the sorting. Trust me, this is easy marks in an exam because they know that many learners are not going to know this part of the year. So please do yourself a favor. It is easy marks. Why do we try to answer question 1, you know, the question where we have to apply ourselves when arrays is so simple, okay? See where you can score your marks, and trust me when I say this, these are easy marks. So let's go ahead, let's run the program and let's round off for today. It says there's an error over here. And what is the error for? Okay, just trying to see what that is. Okay, so it's saying that it's a string. stemItems is equal to sArrayItems. Okay, sArrayItems I is equal to sArrayItems J. Oh, sorry, can we see what's the problem here? The problem is I said sArrayItems, but I didn't indicate the square brackets. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it now. Okay, I'm going to share that with you. Okay, let's do this quickly. Let's enter the name of items. Let's say tea, bread, coffee, okay, whatever it is. And let's just make it, let's just see that it's not going to be 4 all the time or 3 all the time. Let's go put in biscuits. Okay, whatever it is. I'm going to enter exit. Let's try to make it different. Okay, can you see it's not case sensitive, but obviously the program is going to convert it to uppercase and stop the loop. Okay, so would you agree that the size of the array is now 4? Let's display the items. Perfect, it displayed the items perfectly. And let's click on this. Now when I click on this, and I should click this button again to see the change, okay? I'm gonna click on this. Okay, notice nothing happens because I'm gonna click on display items again. Okay, let's look at this. Biscuits, bread, coffee, tea. Notice although it is a 2 B's that were there, and this was absolutely coincidence that it happened, but notice that it was able to sort it when the values were same, for instance, the B and the B, it was able to go to the second character and see, okay, I and R, and it was able to sort it accordingly. So biscuits, bread, coffee, tea. So again, how did it work? If you want to try this at home, you first have to click on the checkbox. Once that has been done, remember our code was typed over there. We click on display, and obviously we're able to see the items being sorted in alphabetical order. Now, let's just finalize for today, or let's just round off. Okay, learners, that's a code that we obviously just saw. Again, don't forget about the 2 for loops and how it works. Okay, what is the takeaway message from this? And I know this thing is in your screens now, but I'm just going to finish off. It obviously dealt with working with unknown sizes for an array. And I promise you this, it's going to be questioned in the exams, whether it's grade 11 or grade 12. Rest assured, you're going to see a question with an unknown size. Okay, you know the purpose of the while loop? Catering for case sensitivity, where we were able to work with uppercase and lowercase values, keeping track of the amount of unknown items and the purpose of that, because if we didn't have a position that was kept changing, how are we able to store values in our arrays? And finally, being able to sort a string array. And oh yeah, rather, I forgot to mention this, I forgot to write this down rather, but the use of a for loop. Notice we use the while loop. Once you were able to get the size of the array, we obviously were then able to use the for loop. Okay, so thank you, learners. I hope that lesson was beneficial. I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. We would look at searching through an array. And yeah, that will be it for this week. So thank you. Have a good afternoon. Bye.